Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 6th edition of the Joy Trip Reading Project and our book discussion. I'm your host, James Edward Mills, and I'm pleased to introduce tonight a remarkable writer, Mr. Derick Lugo, author of the Unlikely Thru Hiker. Now, but before we dive into this evening's discussion, I'd like to first acknowledge that I'm screening into you tonight from Madison, Wisconsin, the ancestral homeland of the Ho-Chunk people, a place known for time immemorial as Daejo. So please, wherever you are in North or South America, take a moment to recognize and acknowledge the Native people that once called the place you now live home. And I'd also like to thank the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison for their support of this and other online discussions, as well as the financial contributions of Ceres Innovations and Outdoor Research, who provide us with the funds that allow me to pay our speakers a modest stipend. And as my saying goes, friends don't let friends work for free. Now, for those of you who might not know or be familiar with the Joy Trip Project, I'm a freelance journalist and independent media producer with a specialty in outdoor recreation and environmental conservation, and I have a further specialty in covering issues of racial diversity, equity, and inclusion in access to our natural resources and our public land. And I think that it's really important that you understand that I'm an educator, and this is actually a teaching community. And throughout the summer, I teach an undergraduate course here at the Nelson Institute called Outdoors for All. And many of the titles that we're discussing in this book group are on my students' reading list. And this month is a discussion, and it's an opportunity for non-students and the general public to learn a little about the experiences of people of color and their relationship with the natural world, as shared through memoirs like the one that we'll be talking about tonight, as well as very specific academic research. Now, our guest today has an incredible story, and he shares his narrative as a thru hiker of the famous Appalachian Trail, one of America's 11 national scenic hiking trails, commonly known as the AT. It spans a distance of almost 2,200 miles from Georgia to Maine, and our guest, Derick Lugo, hiked every single one of those miles. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our guest, Derick Lugo. Derick, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love that intro. You've done this before, right?
A few times, a few times. But the good thing is that I'd like to think I'm getting better practiced at it. And personally, as I was telling you, as we were chatting, as we're getting acquainted, I think it gets better every time, and especially since I'm working with someone who knows quite a bit about online journalism, online media presentation. It helps me out a lot because you know what to expect. You even have a great setup. I love the reception of the screen that I'm looking at right now. None of this blurry, jumpy image of someone talking to me as their laptop is literally on their lap. So this is fantastic.
Oh yeah, in bed, like
right.
just like,
exactly.
No, that's the worst. No.
Oh
no,
my gosh, it's something I can't even tell you. Everybody, thank you again so much for being with us tonight. Do us a favor and let us know where you're zooming in from. And if you know the name of the Native people that formerly or currently occupy the land that you now call home, please drop that in the comments. Also, throughout the evening, as you hear or know things about this book, post your questions into the chat, and as we go through our conversation this evening, we'll talk and hopefully answer some of your questions. And if time allows, I'll even ask each of you to tell us your question in person. Now, before we get started, I want to, first of all, express how amazed I am that your story literally starts with you getting in a taxi cab and going to the start of the Appalachian Trail. How does that start? How do you start a 2,000-mile hike by just showing up and being at the trailhead? What was your motivation to even start this journey?
It's interesting because I think about it now and I'm like, what was I thinking? I think it was during that time, this was a few years ago, it was all about the challenge, okay? And right before I thru hiked, I was living in Italy because one of my dreams was to live in Europe for a while. And then I started missing New York. I started missing English speaking people. And I said, you know what? I'm going to come back to America and I want to do something that's just awesome in America, something I've never done before. And I had read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. And I remember thinking how like he made it sound like such a big challenge. Someone handed the book to me and said, hey, this is really funny, but didn't mention it was about the Appalachian Trail. And I like funny, so I read it and it stuck with me. It was like kind of like a pipe dream where it was like wanting to travel around the world or run a marathon or hike the Appalachian Trail. So it stuck in the back of my mind. So when I decided I was going to do something, because at first I was going to just buy a car and just drive and hit every state, you know, I wanted to explore America. And it just hit me. I said, you know what, I'm going to do that trail Bill Bryson talked about. And then within a week and a half, and I had never hiked before, never pitched a tent, never hiked, I've never spent any time outside in the woods at all. The only woods I knew was Central Park. That's the only, and that's not even woods. That's just, you know, a bunch of trees and you can still see buildings. You can still see the city. So within a week and a half, 2 weeks, I was on the trail. Didn't know how to use any of the gear. Honestly, for me, it was a challenge. I didn't even know if I liked hiking. I just knew I had to get from Georgia to Maine. And that challenge would have been incredible because I'm a storyteller. And I knew there was going to be a story I didn't think I was going to write a book about it. I just thought I had stories to share and that's what I wanted. But I didn't realize it was going to transform my life completely.
Wow. I mean, just to start that journey, what was in your pack? I mean, because in the book, you talk about the bags of tuna and the big flashlight with the 3 D-cell batteries that you said flashlight / bludgeon, you know, so it was both a light source and a weapon. What were you anticipating? What were you expecting when you showed up at the trailhead with a lot of really heavy and maybe not the most appropriate gear?
I had about 2 weeks worth of food, give or take, and I only needed a few days. I had, I think it was like 20 something, like those packets of salmon and tuna. And then I had ready to eat Indian food, which has water and it's really heavy. So my food bag must have been at least 10 pounds, if not heavier. That's what made the weight of my pack so heavy. It was like 42, I can't remember the exact number, but it was in the 40s. But then I realized once I started, people were saying, look, man, in 3 days, we're going to hit like, you know, a resupply. And I didn't realize, and also with the water, I had like 2 liters of water, I had bottles, like it was pretty heavy. I just thought that I needed 2 weeks of food. And if I went into town, you know, a few days before that, I'm set. I didn't know what to expect. Again, I didn't know what I was doing. Eventually I figured it out. There was a lot of hikers that saw me and they were like, what's up with this dude? But didn't say it. That's the thing about the hiking community or the outdoor community is that they saw me, they saw I had no experience, what I was doing. I didn't know how to use any of the gear I had in my backpack. I didn't know how to pitch a tent. This one guy, and I share it in the book, that I couldn't get the tent stakes in the ground. And this dude just came up, had a rock, tapped all the stakes down, looked at me and then tossed the rock and walked away. And I was like, you're a genius, dude. And then I picked up the rock and put it in my pack. No, I'm kidding. I didn't do that. But that day, one of the first chapters in the book is called Lessons at Springer Mountain. And that day I learned everything I should have learned years ago, months ago, weeks ago. I learned that day. And it just went like that. Something was just driving me. And everything just fell into place. And we talked about it earlier about the attitude that I had when I went into this. And I think being a little bit naive and not knowing what I was kind of helped. People ask me like they don't have the experience. They've never been out there. Do I recommend them do what I did? I said, no, don't do that. First, find out if you like hiking. First, go out there, which you will like it, but take baby steps, do a weekend and a week, but don't do what I did where I didn't even hike for a day. I just went and decided 6 months, I'm gonna live in the woods. Let's just do it.
See, I mean, that in and of itself is pretty remarkable because I think a lot of people might have figured out in the first week, 2 weeks that they liked it, But I can also imagine them say, yeah, but I might be a little bit out of my depth, and I think I'll go home, shake down my gear, and then come back and try it again.
Mhm.
What kept you going? I mean, what was it that made you decide after that, once you realized what you're in for, what made you decide to keep moving forward?
That's a great question. I will say that that first few weeks, I was in awe of everything I was encountering. Like the first day I hiked by myself, I was spooked. So I would hear like squirrels running on dry leaves, and I'm like, what the heck? And then I would see like logs and trees that look like dragons and like monsters, everything was new to me. And I was like, oh my God, what is, and I'm all about facing my fears. And although I was scared to be out there, I said, this is something I can talk about for the rest of my life, not knowing that I was going to actually make a career out of it. I just knew that this was something special. What my drive was, first it was a challenge, and then it was falling in love with it. And almost every day it was something new. You just up and go and didn't know what to expect. And the people that I met, it was a combination of things and we were talking about this earlier before we went live, is that everything started falling into place. And I said, this is where I belong. And there's not one time that I thought I need to get off the trail. It was just one thing after another, just kept happening. And it kept my interest. I wasn't bored. Like, I'm a storyteller, and I just like sharing like new things. And I felt like, wow, this is incredible. I'm learning so much. And I like to talk. I don't know if you noticed, but I like to talk. and I had so much to talk about. And the people I met, it was just a perfect thing for me to do. So there was no way I was getting off the trail.
See, and again, you had the enthusiasm, the drive, the verve, and apparently a lot of good weather luck too. Because I mean, there would have been people who would have turned around after the first rainfall, but you hit snow.
Yes.
I mean, and to be able to have all of these experiences and still not allowing it to deter you. The other thing that people typically have is a huge at-home support system, where people are, sending you care packages and making sure that you're getting gear drops and everything else. How did you manage that part? That's the thing that I'm perhaps most interested in really coming to understand. How did you manage to get the infrastructure together to keep you on the trail for the entire distance?
I didn't get anything sent to me.
No.
No, because people were like, you're not gonna survive. You're not gonna make it. What are you doing? My brother was like, the biggest advice was, dude, take a machete with you. They come in small sizes. You can strap it to your chest and you go. No one thought I would make it. My friend Nina, that's in the book, she's like, dude, you are the most metrosexual Black man in New York City. You out in the woods without your beauty products and like essential oils and all that. Please, and so no one thought, they didn't know, first of all, they couldn't wrap it around their mind what I was actually doing. They were like, you're going to walk from Georgia in the South, in the deep South. Bad things happen to people that look like you in the South, all the way up. And also another thing, while they're telling me this, I didn't believe it, because I knew people, I knew thousands and thousands of people have been attempting to thru hike the Appalachian Trail. And I knew it was a safe place. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. There's worse things that happen in Brooklyn than on the Appalachian Trail. So I knew it wasn't an undiscovered country. I knew it was a safe place for me to go. I didn't realize that I actually thought I was going to be by myself most of the time. I didn't realize that I was going to be with so many. I didn't understand the whole hiking outdoor community thing until I was out there, which was a bonus for me. So for me, it was just, okay, I have this time set aside. I had the money saved. I'm just going to go for it and then see what happens. I think, or I know, the one thing that really got me going, especially in the beginning, was that I was going to accept everything that was coming my way. I knew I was going to be hiking in the rain. I knew I didn't really know there was going to be snow, but I accepted it when it happened, although I wasn't happy. I knew I was going to be in the cold, and my peeps are from the tropics, so I can't handle that. And the Smokies, that I can't even, if you read the book, I have like a love-hate relationship with the Smokies. So that was my motivation, was that I'm going to keep it positive. And that's where my mantra, love, peace, and all that good stuff came from. I knew that if I kept saying that, if I would write it and kept it positive, that was going to at least get me started, and then everything was going to fall into place. I had to accept it. I'm going to tell you a quick story about this one hiker I met on the first day. It's in the book, where I thought he was the spokesman of the Appalachian Trail. That first day I met him, he kept saying he had all the right gears. He knew everywhere, where to go. He knew everything about the 18. I was like, yo, if anyone's going to finish this thru hike, it's going to be that dude right there. And it was, I remember it was like a week went by, a week into it. It was raining pretty hard. And I had accepted, I said, you know what? I have my rain gear. I'll be fine. This is part of the adventure. This is part of my story. When we got to camp, he was in a group, and everyone came in, and he was one of the last ones that came in. He was all drenched. His hair was like on his face. He looked defeated. It looked like someone smacked him in the face, and he was just so, he was not happy. And I was like, hey man, how you doing? Because I remember him talking all this positive, all this stuff about the AT, and he just gave me a grunt. And I said, oh man, dude, like he's not accepting what the AT was going to offer, good or bad. And within a week, he was off the trail. I think he came back later, but I don't think he finished it all. But my point is that I knew that if I didn't have that positive attitude, I wasn't going to stay out there, because I had so much going against me, because I had zero experience.
See, I mean, I'm going to try to get off this topic, because just in the sense that you were so woefully unprepared, but did so well. Mm-hmm. I think that it really speaks to perhaps, I think three things. Number one, your very positive attitude, the willingness of nature to be indiscriminate to people who are receptive, and also people that you encounter along the way, what's commonly known as trail magic. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, there's still these things that as a person of color, you're experiencing on the trail, like, very early in your experience, you meet these dudes who, take one look at you and assume that you must have drugs. And like that whole exchange about, you're not a Rasta, and they assume that you must have marijuana. How much of that did you encounter that did make it into the book, or maybe you can expand upon that particular narrative?
My trail name wasn't going to be, they were trying to give me Marley, because I had dreadlocks. And I would say I did get I want to word this correctly, because it wasn't really all thru hikers. There was a couple, but really the people that weren't really serious about thru hiking were the ones that were like, hey, are you a Rasta? Like day hikers, or people that like I knew they're just out here just to have a good time. Not the serious hikers. Because when you're thru hiking, you're a professional hiker. That's all you're doing. You get up in the morning, you go for a hike, all day long, go to bed, you do it all over again for 6 months. If that's not a professional hiker, then I don't know what is a professional hiker. So in a way, like you want to enjoy the outdoors, but you also got to take it serious, because, I made sure I took it easy when I first started, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I did like 8 miles, 10 miles the first few days, because I needed to learn how to do it. I didn't know how to hike. I didn't know what I was doing. So when I did get that, it was more of either locals or people that weren't really thru hiking. There was one guy, in fact, it was a group of people that were horseback riding by a side trail. And they saw me and they said, hiker. And I walked by and they were like, hey, I don't know if they've never seen a Black person before, but they were like, where you from? Africa? And I'm like, because I had my hair up and, I don't know if that's the reason why you thought I was from Africa or whatever. But I said, no, I'm not from Africa. I'm from the other Black place, Brooklyn, like kind of joking around. But you can see it in their eyes where they haven't seen anyone like me out there on the trail. And that didn't bother me. I think people were there were other people saying to me that I was the only Black person that season to thru hike. I didn't notice. I didn't know that was a thing. I walked into this not knowing, but people were coming up to me and saying, man, we're so glad you're out here. Thank you. And I was like, well, I'm glad you're out here. Thank you. Not really knowing what was going on. They were like, no, man, you're like the only Black person. And I was like, okay. At first I thought it was sad because I didn't want to believe it. I'm from New York City, the melting pot of the world, and I have friends from all over the place. And to say that I don't see color, obviously I do. I see color, but that's not how I roll. My best friends are from all over the place. But once that was brought to my attention, I said, you know what? This can't be right. This can't be right. So I would start looking. And I saw throughout my entire thru hike, I saw two Black people that were doing day hikes. And I think it was their first time doing an outdoor hike, like hiking. And then that goes into why I felt the need to write about it, because my intention was not to write a book about the AT. It was just to experience it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there was one gentleman in particular who, said that, in his entire time on the AT and that is over the course of years, not just on this one trip, that you were his 7th Black person that he saw on the AT.
Thru hiker, yeah.
And truthfully, that's kind of remarkable considering how many majority Black communities that it's adjacent to or within a short drive from. And you would think that there'd be at least more traffic for day hikers, or other aspects of just the local community, but there wasn't a lot of it out there. But what really was inspiring to me was that that's not what you made your trip about.
My book's not even about that. My book is not, I'm not going, hey, look at me. I was the only Black person on a trail. I'm a unicorn on the trail. It's not what my story is about.
Right.
My story is about thru hiking and the experience I got. The book is about stepping out of your comfort zone, doing something out of the ordinary and living your dream. That's what it's about. Now, what's happening, and which is a good thing as well, you look at me and obviously I'm a person of color. So that adds to the story. I didn't have to say, and I'm pretty sure I don't say that I'm the only Black person. Other people were telling me. And then I started realizing that was the case. And I did some research. I went back to Harper's Ferry where they do record like how many people thru hike and register and all that. I looked through all the albums of that season. Sure enough, I was the only Black person on the trail. And again, when I tell you people were telling me this, and I think this is in the book. By the way, the book was going to be 400 pages long. And then my publisher was like, all right, you need to cut that in half. So sometimes I don't remember what story made it into the book.
Trust me, I know.
But there was one experience where it was raining really hard. It was like raining like sideways. And I was going up a mountain. There was this one hiker in front of me and he turns around, he sees me and he says, hey, are you Mr. Fabulous? That's my trail name if you don't know, if you haven't read the book, for those people that haven't yet. But if you're on this, you should read it. If you haven't read it, what's up with that? He goes,
homework.
Yeah. He goes, hey, are you Mr. Fabulous? And I go, yeah. And I think about it for a minute and I go like this because I was holding my trekking poles. That's why I'm reenacting it all for you guys. I go, how'd you know? He turns around without missing a beat. He goes, because you're the only Black person on the trail. And I go, okay, that's it. That's a way to say it to me. Like, and I was not offended. People were saying these things not because they were being rude or mean or malicious. They were astonished and they didn't know how to voice it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Just because I'm a writer and I'm a speaker, I do public speaking all the time, doesn't mean I know how to say the right things all the time. And I get it. I get it when someone's like so excited and they're like, you're Black. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not, I embrace it because I felt like it was part of I know it was part of the experience. And I was able to write it and share it with everyone. And I wanted to keep it all positive. There was 2 things I wanted from this book. I wanted to keep it positive because I didn't want, although Bill Bryson's book is amazing, I didn't want to go his route where it was negative. He didn't talk the way he spoke about the AT was not something that would inspire you and say, oh, I love the AT because of his words. No, it was like more of a challenge. And it's a funny read. It's a great read. But I wanted to have a funny read, but be inspiring. I wanted people to actually love the AT the way I loved it, or at least be curious about the AT if they haven't heard of it or they haven't been out there. And another thing, I wanted to make sure that I wanted parents to be able to read this to their kids. So I didn't want to have curses in it, So I had made up words that sound like curses, like son of a Brooklyn Bridge, but it's a fun, but I remember one time I put one curse in there, and then my publisher was like, the editors were like, I think you missed one. They're like, throughout the whole book, there's no curses. And there's like one, I don't know what it was a small one. I said, you know what? You're right. Because I don't want that in there. And now parents, send me messages saying that they've read the book to their kids, and now their kids are inspired to do something like that. So.
And that's a beautiful jumping off point for, a bigger, broader conversation about what the AT might be to one person. Especially if we're trying to inspire young people to have positive experiences in the outdoors, we need to share with them positive experiences about the outdoors. Now, help our audience understand, those of you who haven't read the book, how did you get your name, Mr. Fabulous?
It's not obvious. What?
Well, that goes
Come on,
without
man.
saying. But frankly, there are people out there who try to call you, Marley.
True.
So I'd love for you to give us an idea as to how that name came about.
So when I first started, it was obvious I didn't know what I was doing. It was like a big marquee on my head. I was like, yo, this dude, he's gonna poke an eye or something. He's gonna hurt himself. So within the first week, I found myself hiking with a group. And I named them the Moving Village. And everyone within a week had a trail name except for me. And they saw how far I've gotten. A week, into my thru hike, and I was doing really well. I wasn't hurt, I was fine. And I would joke around about wishing I had, because they knew I like to groom myself. I wanted to stay fresh. I would, when I was in New York City, I would wear designer clothes. Like I was just young and trying to look good, and get my hair did, my nails done, and I would joke around saying that I wish I had a full-length mirror I can just fold up and put in my backpack, because I was going to stay fresh. I would shave when I was in the stream, my entire thru hike, I didn't grow a beard. I just had like a goatee. So I was clean shaven, I was fresh, and at least I thought I was fresh. And a hiker was like, hey man, you're a Mr. Fabulous, just because they had decided within a week, my group, that they were going to give me a trail name, and they wanted to get to know me a little bit. And once I shared all that, they're like, one guy was like, hey man, you're a Mr. Fabulous. Like, no, I can't be a Mr. Fabulous. I cannot tell people that because that sounds creepy, right? Like, hi there, I'm Mr. Fabulous, that's just weird. He's like, yo, if you say it like that, then it's going to be creepy. So he convinced me, if you read the book, Overdrive convinced me to use the trail name for a few days. So just use it, see how it goes. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to use it, but it's not going to stick, because with a trail name, people can name you a bunch of stuff. They try to name me Marley in New York. And I was like, nah, you don't have to accept it. Because I believe it needs to have a story. And what's the story in Marley? Oh, I have dreadlocks. Ooh, that's a great story, And Mr. Fabulous has said, I don't know about this, but I tried it. And one of the biggest questions you get when you're thru hiking, when people know you're thru hiking, is what's your trail name? And almost every day, someone's going to ask you what your trail name is, especially if they're day hikers, if you meet a new thru hiker. To this day, when I'm on the Appalachian Trail and I see a thru hiker, I'm like, what's your trail name? And when I would answer it, I would almost apologize, like, hey, I'm sorry, they call me Mr. Fabulous, but, I didn't name myself, and the reaction I got was not what I thought it would be. I thought people were going to say, why are you Mr. What makes you Mr. Fabulous? That wasn't the reaction. The reaction I got was a smile, laughter. They wanted to hear the story. And I saw instantly how it made people feel good. And it ended up being more than just about me. It was more of, hey, there's this Mr. Fabulous persona that I have on the trail, and it's not about me. It made other people feel good. And I want to share this quick story that I love sharing, and it's in the book, where what sealed the deal, when I decided that's it, I'm keeping it, was I am a few days into being Mr. Fabulous, or using that name. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it. And I'm hiking alone, and I'm going northbound, and there's a group of like 15 elderly hikers, day hikers. And I step aside and we talk a little bit. They, wish me luck, ask me a few questions. And the last person, she's old, much older than they are. She must have been like 200 years old, older than the Appalachian Trail. She was old. She had an aid and a cane with her, short, really cute. And she came up to me and she said, "Son, what's your trail name?" And I go, "Ma'am, it's Mr. Fabulous." And without missing a beat, she goes, "Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for Mr. Fabulous my entire life." And she reaches up, gives me a kiss on my cheek, and storms off with like a little pep in her step, has her cane, like twirling it, and like her aide is running after her. And I was like, man, what? Mr. Fabulous is the cure to like old age. I was like, you know what? I'm keeping it. That's it. So, and to this day, it's not about me. It's about the story and about how like people smile, because that's what it's really about. I came out of the AT with a feeling of joy and a different understanding of life and humans. And that Mr. Fabulous story is a part of it. And when I share it to this day, people just smile. And that's what I want. That's all I want. And I say this in the book, is that I wish whatever was going on the AT, that, for lack of a better word, that magic, that feeling that we had on there, I wish I could put it in a bottle and just take it with me and sprinkle it all over the place when I hear someone talking about politics or this. And I just like, and kind of like, okay, everything's good, But yeah, so that's where the Mr. Fabulous story came from. I continue using it when people say, I couldn't go back. There's two things I couldn't do. I couldn't look the way I did on the trail with all the bandanas and stuff like that. I don't know if you saw a picture of me on the trail, but I look like I should be juggling in like Times Square or something, I look like an act. I can't do that anymore unless I'm in Times Square. And I can't ask my friends to call me Mr. Fabulous. Trust me, I tried it. Nina was not having it. She was like, "I ain't calling you Mr. Fabulous. What about Fab? It ain't happening." It's like, so, but yeah, to this day, when now it's not just hikers that call me Mr. Fabulous, it's people that read the book. And I know that they know a little bit about me, and I'm okay with it. Like there's a story behind it, and it just works for my life. Now, again, in real life, I'm Derick Lugo, but again, not quote unquote real life. I mean, the AT is, the outdoors is real life. But yeah, it's part of who I am now.
Wow. Well, I will never call you Mr. Fabulous, but in my head, you'll always
Why not?
be fabulous to me.
Why not? No kidding.
And there you go, because I think there's something to be said for allowing people to be whoever they want to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think the long and short of it, though, is that the outdoors, our trail systems, our ability to experience nature in a very positive way, gives us an opportunity to be who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, who we are meant to be. And I'm curious too, because there was another scene in your book where someone asked to touch your hair. Okay, and I got to tell you, for those of you on this call who've never had that experience before, what is it? I do not understand, because people have been wanting to touch my hair since I was a child. And I really felt the way you handled it was kind of amazing. And I think that it also framed a bit of your perception of people and their experience to you. Can you share a little bit about that incident and how you managed it?
Yeah. Throughout, and I think my thinking was a lot clearer when I was on the AT, because there wasn't a lot. I'm from New York City, and there's so many distractions in the city. She wants all your attention. So it's really hard to just focus on one thing. When I was on the trail, I was able to complete my thoughts, and I knew how I was going to approach this trail. And I knew after within a few weeks that I was an oddity out there, and people are going to ask me some strange things, and that was one of them. So I try to put myself in their position. I would never do that, but if you've never seen anyone, if your parents ain't teaching you like certain things, and they're like, don't touch people's hair, then that's on your parents. But I get it that if they see something, I don't know, like if it's not like I go up to a beautiful woman and say, can I touch your face? You're beautiful. I mentioned that in the book. So I wouldn't personally do that. But again, I was never defensive on the trail. I was always trying to take in the moment, the experience, and kind of figure it out, which I wish I could do more of that nowadays. Now it's like almost back to the one thing, and I don't want to drift off too much, but the one thing I did take from the AT is that I can continue that feeling I had on the AT with me, with the stories I shared, with these talks. So that has not left me. But I would say, when he touched my hair, okay, and he didn't just touch one, I felt like he was just like, what it was, and I was like, oh boy. And he was a big dude. And I think it for me, since he was a big guy and he was a guy that didn't look like he would want to do something like that, but did it, it kind of changed it for me, because it was like, this is something out of character for this guy. And I'm just going to accept it. And the same guy left me with these words. I saw him later, and it's in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because I think I marked it. Okay, here it goes. I marked because I've read this before. So this same guy, I see him, and he goes, this is the last time we're going to see each other. He goes, he looks me straight in the eyes. This will be the last time I see you, he says. So I'll leave you with these words. Be kind to all. Don't take your friends for granted, and be memorable. Now, I wasn't planning to read this to you guys, but that's deep. That is deep, because if I would have been like, get off my dreads, like, who are you? Then I would have never got those words from him, so I couldn't judge him. I couldn't react because of something that he had never seen and doesn't know what dreadlocks feel like, Since I embraced it, I got these words from this guy that I remember to this day. So your actions, it goes into like your actions, especially on the AT, you may see that same person again, who knows? There was times where I was on the AT, saw one person one day, and then we see them a month later somewhere else. And a lot of times they were like, you still on a trail, dude? We didn't think you were going to make it, So I know walking into and having that attitude, that positive attitude, really helped the experience. And it's one of the reasons why the book is a success, because I had such a good story to share with people.
No, absolutely. And that particular incident was really meaningful to me, because I've had that experience myself. I've gotten a lot less hair now, but for some reason, it's still really attractive. The long and short of it, though, is that you put yourself in a vulnerable position and allowed yourself to be receptive to human kindness. And that's a big part of what trail magic is all about. I've got a couple of more questions, but please, if you have questions in the audience, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. And in the last 15 minutes of our discussion, we'll get to the audience questions. Specifically, though, I'm really curious to know if you can share a little bit about some of the most profound trail magic that you might have experienced. I mean, can you point to a single quintessential moment that let you know that there is indeed trail magic to be found in the kindness of strangers?
I would say there's a handful. The main one was from other hikers, where they saw I had no experience, and it could have just been like, you on your own. But within the first day, hikers taught me how to use my water filter, which I didn't know how to use, how to hang a bear bag, how to use my mini stove, how to pitch my tent, all these things. Other hikers guided me, showed me, advised me, gave me some tips. So that's one part of trail magic that not a lot of hikers even thought they were giving. They were just being kind. I would say whenever we got rides into town was great. And I'm a big believer that just because you're through hiking doesn't mean that you deserve trail magic. You don't. I don't like, it was my choice to be out there, not yours. You don't need to give me anything. I don't care. But the biggest trail magic was when I was, and I'm pretty sure I kept this in the book, when I got heat sickness. And I try to not be graphic in the book, but we're adults here, right? I was dehydrated and things were coming out both sides, right? And it was really bad. There was a climb over a hill, and right over that climb, I was going to go down the hill and hit a road where Shanti had called someone to pick us up because she knew I wasn't feeling that great. But it should have taken me 10 minutes to get up and over, 15 minutes. It took me an hour because I couldn't get started, and I would stop. And I dropped at one point, looked up in the sky, and to get that ride, because his name is John, and they waited for me for about an hour, and the guy was super nice. He was talking to Shanti, who I was hiking with at the time. And they saw me, he grabbed my bag, put it in the back, and I passed out in his back seat. And he took me in. They had a folding cot in his office. They gave me Gatorade, and they kept trying to hydrate me. They had dinner for us, and I sat at the table, and I couldn't eat any of it. As a thru hiker, the one thing you are is hungry. You're burning thousands and thousands of calories, and you're not going to replace it. You're always hungry. There was a time where I remember I was at Harper's Ferry. There was a big pizza pie. And right before I grabbed the first slice, I said, when did this become normal when I can eat an entire pizza pie? Because you're burning so many calories. I didn't gain any weight. I didn't lose any weight. I stayed exactly where I started. So I couldn't eat anything. And I'm sitting, I'm like, I had a salad, and then I just couldn't finish it, and I had to excuse myself. And I was so upset because for people to take you in and feed you is like the biggest treat ever. And they just kept giving me Gatorade just to hydrate, electrolytes, just get me hydrated again. And they said, don't worry about it. If you get up at night, you want to eat, just dig in the fridge. They really, really took care of me. That next day, they took us to the train station. That was when I went to New York for the weekend to like kind of recuperate and resupply and stuff like that. I had like a hiker little bash. But that was the one where I said that it really saved me, because I would have been in trouble out in the woods in my tent. So that's the biggest one. But throughout my entire thru hike, I would say whenever people were nice enough to pick us up and take us into town to resupply, it was the best. And to shower. I love showers.
Yeah, because you got to look fabulous after all.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because that would have been enough to drive someone off the trail permanently.
Yeah.
And you were still there, and clearly,
and being close to New York City as well. I could have been like, I'm done. I'm going home. Yeah,
and again, I think that really demonstrates to me your commitment. And the thing that kept you on the trail, and truthfully, those stories like that, I think, will be very helpful to let people know that when straits are dire, there will be people who will happily help you. And because I think that sense of isolation or the lack of compassion from strangers is probably what keeps a variety of different people off trails across the country. And again, I think that's a very positive example of what one can expect in an environment like this. But I also appreciate the fact that you never felt that you deserved necessarily trail magic, just by virtue of even being a human being.
Yeah.
So in specific answer to that question, or rather another question, if no one is entitled to trail magic, how do you earn it, or rather, what does one do,
That's a good one.
to be receptive and capable of receiving trail magic?
Yes, that's good, because there's a chapter in my book called A Suspicious Mind, because I'm from New York. And whenever someone's giving me something or talking to me, either they want something from me, and I'm like, where's my wallet? Make sure they're not stealing my wallet or something like that. Like, hey, and I tell stories about experiences that I've had on the trail. So for a minute, it took me a while, because if someone's leaving food on a trail, like at a trailhead, like you do that in New York, I'm just stepping right over it. That's not something we do. No one's giving me something for free. They want something from me. So it took me a while to get used to that and understand what that was about, because all these small towns around the AT, they're hiker friendly. They know about us. So they cater to that. And I quickly, well, not quickly, it took me a minute, but I started learning that, hey, this is something good. And back to one of your last question, another great trail magic was people just leaving gallons of water. When I hit New Jersey and New York, it was through when it was a drought, a heat wave, and there was no water source. So when we hit a trailhead, there was gallons of water. I was like, oh my God, the best trail magic ever, water, just filled it up. That was the best trail magic. So when people were doing it, when I started getting used to it, I said, man, people are giving me this. What am I doing to deserve this? I wouldn't take anything that I didn't need. If I had snacks and bars or whatever, I wouldn't take what's in the cooler. I only took if I needed something, because I wanted other thru hikers to have as well. The worst thing is when you don't have any food and you see a cooler and it's empty because someone took it all, So it kind of bothered me a little bit. And I said, what do I have to offer? I have nothing. I just have my backpack and enough money just to get me through this thru hike. What do I have to offer? And it quickly came to me. I like to talk. I like to share stories. And I said, you know what? People do this for a reason. They leave stuff out here for us for a reason, because they care. And you know what? They want to hear our story. They want to hear, like, how are you doing? And as soon as I saw a trail angel, I shared my experience. There was one time, remember, I was going to Harper's Ferry and I just wanted to get there. I was hiking like really, really fast. It's the Harper's Ferry is like the psychological halfway point of the Appalachian Trail. And I was going to do a 0 there. I was doing a near and a 0 where I take a day off. But I had like short miles that one day, but I was just like going really fast. And it was a family on the trail of like parents and like 3 kids. And as I'm running past them, I said, hey, I'm running past, and they go, are you a thru hiker? And I went, as much as I wanted to get to Harper's Ferry, I said, you know what? I'm gonna stop. I was like, you ever see the cartoons where you're like going really fast and they kind of like stop? And I went back and started talking to them and shared my story, because I felt that I'm getting trail magic by just having a conversation with them as well, and seeing the smile on their face. The little kid saw my trekking poles, and I made him small, and he was walking around pretending he was a thru hiker, and I knew right away that was the way I was going to give back. That was they're giving me trail magic. I'm gonna give them what I have to offer, and just stories. And to this day, that's what I do. I share stories. I've been, since I was a little kid, and it stems from being that kid that used to get in trouble all the time, but I used to talk my way out of it, so I was really good at talking my way out of stuff. So it stems from that. So I'm a good storyteller, even on the trail. And I think I mentioned a story in the book where it's obvious I'm not telling the truth, but the hikers are looking at me and just like hanging on every word, and so I know I have that gift to share a story, and that's what I want to continue doing. The tricky part is that I felt that at the time, because I was a writer beforehand, I did poems and a bunch of other stuff, short stories, but never I have manuscripts that I haven't published yet, but never something I wanted to share with people. And I always felt that I was a great storyteller by just sharing it, like talking to people. So writing it, it was one of those things where they need to hear my voice through my words. And I feel like I'm a better writer now than I was when I first started writing the book, because writing is a craft. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So I wanted to make sure that the stories that I have, that I can put that into words, and hopefully I did it with my book.
Well, I would definitely say that you have, and I think that
Thank you.
that's another bit of trail magic for all of us. I'd love to open the line
Yeah.
up for questions from the audience. Cynthia Carey, you were kind enough to post a question. If you can unmute your microphone and share your question with the audience, please.
Well, I was just wondering, Derick, if you had ever considered publishing a version with photos. I think it would be cool to see all those pictures that you took.
Oh, okay. Well, it's funny because I wanted to have photos and the publisher, I kind of and didn't. I think I wanted to focus more on the words than the stories, because the worst thing is to have a book. I'm not a fan of books that have photos and it's all black and white, you know? I feel like it wasn't going to work. The one thing that the publishers, and I spoke to them, they're based in Boston, and I saw them, I think it was like last year before COVID. And I asked them, didn't we talk about putting a map of the AT on the beginning of the page so they can see? And they were like, oh yeah, right. And I was like, oh man, you totally forgot about it. But what I plan to do, and I was going to do this last year, but a lot of different projects happened, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a children's book version of the Unlikely Thru Hiker. Although I keep going like this, but my book is over here. That's why I keep going like that. Although it's kid friendly, I do want to do a kid. I think it would be, I don't know if I read an article or heard it somewhere, that what needs to happen is people think that writing a children's book, oh, I can write a children's book. You don't need to be a great writer. No, the best children's book are people that are really good writers, you know, bestsellers or have like good book. And I said, you know what, I think my book is pretty good. I think I can do this, but I want to approach it where the same way I approach this, where I'm not going to dumb it down, but I'm not going to make it hard. It's an easy, quick read, but I also don't want to make it too simplified. I want it to be inspiring. I want it to be educational. I want it to be entertaining. Those are the three things that I want from a book. So I do want to set a time where I can just sit down and focus on that children's book. But yes, no photos, but a children's book, it's coming. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Awesome. Next, Julie Ernstein, can you unmute your microphone and ask your question?
Sure can. Hi, everybody. So you obviously brought tremendous positivity to this whole experience. So that can't be your answer.
Okay.
Interested to learn, what do you do differently now as a result of your AT experience?
My career changed. That's huge. What I do now is talk more about the outdoors. I went from my job, who I was before the AT. I worked at night in New York City. I was a bartender. I managed bars. I was general manager of one of the busiest bars in New York City in Midtown. And I was a manager of a live music venue, bar, restaurant. So the nightlife was my world. So I would go to bed at 5, 6 in the morning sometimes, okay? When I thru hiked, that slowly, I went back to New York, but it slowly started changing. During my thru hike, I was always the last person to get up and to leave. People would leave several hours before me, but I was still getting up at like, 7, sometimes 6, but 7, 8. I would leave like 10, but I was a morning person. When I lived in New York City, I was not. I would get up at 11, 12 sometimes. So I wasn't a morning person. So that changed. And also just having the outdoor experience and having a love for it. I talk about my adventure, the outdoors, daily. It's my job now. It's what I do, whether I'm writing, whether I'm doing talks, whether I'm book club, doing lives, all the new projects that I do. This is my life now. I'm not going back to like my New York. I don't even live in New York anymore. I live surrounded by mountains. So it changed my life completely. When people say thru hiking will change your life, it changed a lot for me. I went from not knowing anything about the outdoors to it's my career, it's my life now.
Wow. You know, and I'm
Cool,
also
thanks.
Julie, thank you very much for your question. You know, I'm also curious too. You not so long ago took your brother Carlos on a hike, which, you know, I got to tell you that I love the fact that you want to, you know, pay it forward by introducing your family to this. First of all, what inspired you to invite Carlos on a hike? Because apparently you walked from New York City to the intersection of the Appalachian Trail. How did that go? And is Carlos now a hiker too?
Man, my family and friends, they knew nothing about the AT. They couldn't even pronounce the Appalachian Trail. Okay. And then when I finished, they were all experts. You know, where my brother was like, if you can do it, I can do it. I'm like, yo, man, you know what? So he went from, yo, you shouldn't do it, to I'm getting gear, I'm getting this and that. And I try to guys like, okay, let's do this. But let's do baby steps. Don't do what I did. It's not going to work for you. I promise you. And he said, no, man, we're going to do this. And I said, okay, for my birthday, we're going to hike. And this is something I didn't know until after I thru hiked, was that there's a trail from Manhattan, from the George Washington Bridge that goes all the way up. It's the Long Path Trail that goes along the Hudson River up to Bear Mountain in Harriman State Park, 50 miles. I said, look, man, you want to do it? I'm going to do it. So the idea, I probably could have done it by myself in like 3 days, but as soon as we started, he was a smoker too. He was so miserable. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy did a short film called Trail Brothers, so you can see the experience. So they followed us along. They met us along the way, and there's a scene where I was hiking ahead, and my brother, I would wait for him, and he would get mad at me. He's like, "Why are you moving so fast?" I'm like, "No, I'm moving fast. I'm just going." Turns out that my brother is more of a camper, not a hiker. He'd rather just drive up to camp and just pitch a tent and he's good. I like to earn it. You know, I want to go and earn it. So there's a scene where like we're climbing a hill, a pretty like steep hill. And I'm on the top and I'm like recording him and I go, that was pretty easy, huh? And he's like, and he's drenched, he's all wet, not wearing the right pants, because it's not synthetic, it was cotton, and he's like wet. And I'm like, I told you, man. He said, these look better though. These look better. I'm like, oh man. So he wants to be a hiker, but he's not. He's not a hiker. Nina went and bought some trail runners, and I took her to do some day hikes. So they now hike. But yeah, it's a good thing, because my family and friends knew nothing about it like me. And now the outdoors is part of their life because I did something so amazing like that through hiking the AT.
That's awesome. And in the time that we have left, you mentioned in our exchange by Instagram.
I thought this was 3 hours.
You know, it just goes to show how quickly time freaking flies. But long and short, you've got a podcast starting. Is that true? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. The podcast is called Unlikely Stories Podcast. And while sharing my adventure and my story, I started noticing other stories that weren't really featured. So with this podcast, we're going to be featuring a lot of stories that either it's unlikely that person would have been out there doing it, but more unlikely that you've heard that story. So I'm sharing stories that aren't really featured. I want this to be a platform, and it's not just BIPOC, although a lot of the interviews are people of color. I speak to an African, but it's going to be also of all different races, colors, creed, because I want that podcast to be a friendly place for all communities, because I'm a big believer that the outdoor community is made up of a bunch of different communities, not just one. So I want to feature that. So you're going to hear stories. And also there's 4 Black explorers of history that is going to be that we share. And J.R. Harris. I think you're going to have J.R. Harris on this as well, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, he's on it.
I thought he was going to be in the audience today, but we'll catch him later.
So he was on it, and he shares about these Black explorers. So it's, like I said before, I'm all about educating, inspiring, and entertaining people. And those are the three things that this podcast is going to bring. And it comes out on my birthday. That's what we're aiming for, September 8th.
Awesome. Well, that's 10 days before my birthday. We're Virgo brothers.
Virgo, yes, I knew there was a reason why I like you.
Nice. Well, we could talk for another 2 hours to fill out that 3-hour threshold, but in respect to people's time, we're now at the top of the hour. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this fabulous conversation. I want to say thanks again to the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the financial support of Ceres Innovations and Outdoor Research. We look forward to our next discussion. In July, our book will be Planet Walker by my friend Dr. John Francis. So please put it on your reading list and pick up the book. Go out there and be joyful, and most importantly, keep reading. Have a great rest of your evening, a fabulous, safe, and sane 4th of July weekend, and we will see you next time. Thanks for being here, and good night.